Good morning. My name's Ray. This is Busy Izzy. We're both with Team S.T.E.A.M. And this morning we're out behind Flash Industrial Painting, getting ready to spend another hot August day sandblasting the entire tank and chassis and wheels on this 1999 Kenworth T800 water truck. And what you're looking at is the fact that this is a South Dakota truck and everything on South Dakota roads rusts. So this paint job didn't fail. The rust just did what rust does. I mean, rust will do this to a brand new truck chassis within just a few years. Brand new right off the assembly line. But their chassis actually looks good. So the rust is the big issue here. Now, granted, I have a couple of spare hatches. They had two new ones built. They had one older one repaired. The black one that's on top's not going to get painted. This is the other new one that they had built. And this is one of those water trucks that goes down gravel roads or dirt roads or on construction sites and waters everything down behind it. So while it appears to be a vac truck and it could probably still serve as one, its predominant function is as a water truck. So that's what these are about. Each of these sprays a big fan pattern. There's one on each side. And this is just to wet down construction sites mostly, and road projects and gravel and that sort of thing, keep the dust down. But as you can see, the rust is, the further back you go, of course, the rust gets worse and worse. And it does that on truck chassis too. The further back you go, the worse it gets. And then we've got this pump. That's going to take some fairly specialized masking to keep from tearing everything up on it and still get the sandblasting and the job done. We'll have to take this loose. This is the plastic lubricant holder for the pump. Well, it's 7 in the morning and it already feels like the sun is only 30 feet overhead. Might as well get started. Whew, well, that was a long, hot day, but I got it all done. Got the truck pulled in just before it seems like a big old rainstorm's about to move in. So I'll go ahead and get the shop closed down, get myself cleaned up. All right, at this point, we've got everything wiped down with thinner. We've got everything taken apart. We've got everything all masked up. And now we're just removing the adhesive off of like where the door decals were and just details like that before we really get into some sanding and scratching. And before we get into sanding and scratching, the big thing I have to do is I have to walk around this thing and locate every single run from every single rivet, and there's a lot of them, and every single anomaly that needs to be sanded in particular. That way the crew doesn't go around and scratch all these rivets and make everything dull, and then I can't see exactly what's what. So the first thing I need to do before I turn them loose sanding and scratching is go over it myself and sand out runs, mark where dents and dings are, mark where gouges are, that sort of thing. That way they can just take off and sand. So that's one of the next things I'll do. But before I do that, I noticed this little issue with the back of the cab here. And as you can see, there's these hoses. They're hydraulic hoses, and that's a hydraulic cooler right up there. And I noticed that this block and that plastic block were rubbing against the back of the cab. And you can see really rubbing against the back of the cab. And they're, like I said, they weigh quite a bit and they're just kind of free flowing in here, and that's just where they ended up over time. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and cut this anchor style bolt into. You see there's the threaded part, and I cut it in two with just a Sawzall, just so I can have this Nice, smooth, round, yet heavy-duty circulature design here with this flat spot on it, which is important, and I'll show you why. And I've already come in here with the die grinder. This is one of the only parts of the whole tank we didn't sandblast, because as you can see easily, it didn't need it. There aren't really any runs in it. There aren't really any rock chips in it. I mean, this has held up a quarter century basically perfectly, except for where this electrical line's been rubbing on it. You can see it's rubbed through. I went ahead and did this with a 2-inch roll-lock disc just so I can put this on there and weld it. Group it with these two lines and then put a couple of heavy-duty zip ties on them and zip tie them to this. And because of the rounded edge nature of it, it'll hold zip ties and won't wear through them over time. They'll just stay there forever and ever. Now, I'm not normally quick to just weld new designs and ideas on somebody else's truck and implement a new way of doing things on somebody else's truck without at least talking to them. But these guys and I have a different sort of relationship than a lot of my customers and I do, in that we've done a lot of deals throughout the years and a few unorthodox deals. And this deal just happens to be one of those unorthodox deals. I'm not making any money on this truck. Instead, they're going to trade me for a 2004 Bobcat Toolcat 5600 with only 917 hours on it. The paint's rough on it because it sat outside its whole life, but outside of that, and that just happens to be my thing, by the way. So, you know, I'm not afraid to buy a hailed out vehicle or something with paint issues. And that is really the only issue. And other than that, that's what we're going to do. He's going to trade me straight across that Toolcat 5600 for this truck. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull those hoses back, consolidate them with that electrical line, and zip tie them with a couple of heavy duty zip ties to that ring I just welded on there. That way I can start prepping the back of a cab for the fiberglass repair that it's going to need in those two spots. And another one of the things that I'm going to do before I get this in paint is I'm going to go ahead and mount that little reservoir that holds the lubricant for that good sized pump right there. And I showed you before, and there it is. It's been taken out and just set aside. But you remember this, it's got all this caulking holding this whole edge together. So it's got a giant crack here, covered in cracks there, covered in cracks on the other side. And this tank being in rough shape like this is something I've seen dozens, if not over 100 times in all of the years that I've been doing this, the decades I've been doing this. So to see something like that isn't like, oh, what's going to happen? You know, I better do something about that. I always just put them back on just like they were. I'll clean it up. I'll get some of that grease off of it and stuff like that. But you know, we put them back on put together day, just like a lot of the stuff. These trucks are always at some point of degradation. Work trucks are always at some point of degradation. And if that's the point that that's at, then there's nothing we can do about it almost every single time, if not every single time. But this time, because these two brothers were so good with me about this trade, when I just mentioned to them, hey, if you guys happen to have a skid steer or something like that, a skid steer type piece of equipment you want to, you know, get rid of in exchange for this work. And a few days later, they got a hold of me. They didn't own one. They found one at a dealership and then went and bought it after they sent me pictures and said, what do you think? I said, heck yeah, let's do it. They went and bought it, full price at a dealership, just to trade for this job. So that was pretty cool of them. And, you know, so I'm going to go the extra mile on a few of these little things on this particular job. And this reservoir is definitely one of them. So what we're going to do here is I've got this one that I bought off of Amazon. That's not a plug. That's just where I got it from. The name that's on it, that's not a plug. That's the first time I've ever used their stuff. I can tell you right now, I don't like that all the holes are metric. I have no problem with metric. It's probably a superior system, but I don't have anything in the shop pipe fitting wise that is metric. I have metric bolts, but I don't have any pipe fittings that are metric. So there's nothing I could do with this except for this sight glass right here was on this side. And you can see they've got 3 bolts on one side, 3 threaded holes on one side, and 3 threaded holes on the other. So I rearranged this thing completely and one underneath. And the reason I did all of that is because of where it's going to be mounted. The other one was mounted right here. So this one's going to be mounted right here. In fact, these 2 bolt holes line up perfectly with the 2 on this side. And when you mount them on there and you make it line up, it's perfect. It's got a good head height. It got a great location. You can duck inside and see the sight glass easily, but it's not poking out on this side where whenever you slide a big hose up in here or something, it could at one point strike it and break it off. And then therefore you'll drain clear to the bottom of your bottom glass. Instead, It's over on that side. And the valve I need is on this side because that's what it is on the reservoir that the truck came with, was it had a valve that went out that side and strung along the bottom there and then went out that hole. And that's what I've got right here. Only we're going to be using clear tubing this time. So when I fill this up with oil, you'll be able to see how much is in it by the side glass, and you'll be able to see the fact that there's oil present just by the tubing itself. And I'm going to run that clear down to where the other one was. Now, I've got the crew sanding and scratching on the rest of the truck. And while they do that, I'm going to be sanding on this hood. But before I go sanding on the hood and getting it all dull, I'm going to show you exactly what we're looking at with this particular hood. You see, that just seems like a normal T800 hood. Let me get a ladder here. But see those cracks? Notice how they're everywhere? And that's where we are on the hood, 2/3 of the way up. As you go up, it's all this way. No matter where I choose to zone in on it, no matter where I go. No matter where I go on this hood. Now here I am, clear over here. I've gone, no matter where I go, it is absolutely covered in those cracks. So, and around the hood, around the corner, look at the corner. This, I don't know how well this is showing up, because in my monitor I can't barely even see any cracks. But then over here on the fender, I mean, look at them all. It's just covered in an even layer. Millions and millions of cracks. Just covered in them. The whole thing, the whole hood. Top to bottom, front to back. So I'm going to sand all that down, and all those cracks need to be filled. And before I get it in the first of the two colors, I've got to have every one of those cracks filled. Now what I've done here on the back of the truck is I've taken this 2-inch roll-lock disc in 36 grit, and I've gone all the way down to bare aluminum, all the way around those. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this shrinking hammer, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to shrink all of this all in about 1/8 of an inch in this location and in this location. And then I'm going to take this fiberglass, not these ones, they'll be smaller than these. These are actually going on the hood. There's a little repair I'm going to do on the hood. But take some fiberglass and then fill those. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to take these sheets that happen to be this size, and I'm going to put them, you can see right up there where I've prepped it on the back side. And here I am over on this other side, the passenger side here, and as you look down, you can see this hood is 3/16 thick. In most spots, that's a good average. Then you get down to here, and it is paper thin. I mean, look. You just, it's just, I mean, I'm chipping away at it. It's just paper thin right there. From here to here is literally as thin as a sheet of paper. So that's where this patch is going to go. I'm going to thicken this up and strengthen it quite a bit. And speaking of this hood, we'll go ahead and take a peek at the repairs I did yesterday and how they turned out here today. Okay, now here I am standing on near the top of a ladder here with the hood open, and this is the passenger side here. This is the side that needed more work, and as you can see here, we got the repair in place. If you look at the edge, that's as thick as it should be now. It's about 3/16 all the way. If you look down here, I went ahead and did a little repair here in that corner because it had a little crack I noticed in a couple spots. Same with that side, had a little crack I noticed, so I went ahead and prepped it and did a little repair there as well. And now the inside of this hood is as repaired as it needs to be, and I can go ahead and get on with the rest of this job. And over here on the passenger side, right here at the front of this, we had that missing material entirely. And what I did was I just prepped the backside and put a big patch on it. Put a nice big thick, probably 1/4 inch thick patch on it, because this is not a structural repair. This is never going to, it's not like trying to put fiberglass on a truck frame or something. This isn't a structural repair. This is just a hole that got rusted in it. We put a big old fiberglass patch over a well-prepped surface, which means there's a 100% guarantee that fiberglass will not rust. So I've never done a repair like this in my entire career, which has spanned over 25 years. I was doing these sorts of repairs for 2 or 3 years before I ever even went into business, at least. And I've never had one come back. I've never had one rust out. And now here we are back on the driver's side, the driver's half of the back of the truck. And you remember that this had a big hole worn in it and a decent sized hole worn in it. You could easily put a quarter in that one, and you could have thrown a ping pong ball probably through that one. And then just some various dents and dings. Well, that's all been smoothed out. A couple coats of bodywork. That's all done now. Got some other little dings taken care of around the cab corner. Most of the bodywork is done. I have a couple dings on the door, and then just some cracks to fill and a ton of glazing work up front. But the bodywork itself is mostly done here, except for now what I need to do is an absolute ton of bodywork to the tank. Now, I'm not going to be filling every cancerous spot on this tank. And in my entire career, my entire life, I've never done one like that. I've never had a customer ask. I've never had a customer say, let's negotiate the price according to you filling every single cancerous spot on this tank. I've done it on winch trucks, and I've done it on some bed trucks. I've done it on some stuff, but I've never done it on a vac tank of any sort, or a water tank of any sort. And the only reason I'm going to do it here is because I want the spot where this stripe's going to be something I can work with. I don't want my stripe to run through a bunch of cancer and be all bumpy and ugly looking. So where the stripe is taking place, and I can see on the by the, just where the what's left behind from me sandblasting, I can tell right where that stripe is, right where its dimensions are. And within the confines of that stripe, I'm going to be doing all the cancerous spots. So like I said, my lines come out super sharp, and that's the reason why I'm not going to be doing all the cancer on this thing. There would be twice as much, 3 times more body work on the cancer on this thing as there is the average back of the average sleeper. I mean, it's a huge deal. They don't care if it's like that or not. And we definitely didn't negotiate the price to be like that, or the trade to be like that. So, but I do want the lines to come out clean. So I am going to get back here and do body work where the stripe exists. And on the other side, it's much worse than this side. And at this point, I can show you a good example of how this is going to look once I've sanded it and before I've sanded it. And as you can see here, this has all been applied down this side. And here's where I've gotten to so far with the sanding. And that's how it's going to look when it's sanded and ready for wet sanding primer. And then over here, same thing. That's how much of that corrosion I took care of. There's a little bit below this line, quite a bit below this line, but I didn't want to get down in there and mess with all that stuff. Like I said before, this is a tremendous extra step to just include into a work truck paint job. Not something we normally do, but since it's got a stripe job and I want it to be clean, went ahead and got rid of the corrosion. So everything from there down you'll still see, but once this is painted, and that is the underside and shadowed, you'll have to be looking for it to even see it. It's not going to be a visual nuisance at all. So really, I've taken care of a large eyesore on this tank, by and large, and just for the sake of getting the stripe on it straight. I went ahead and had the crew pull this grill out of here. And it's about what I figured I would see. You see stuff like some cracks right here. It's hard to see. There's a crack that runs right here and then comes on this side and runs all the way across. And then there's just some stress cracks. These aren't all the way through. These are just stress cracks. Because, you know, like I said, at some point this hood was on a truck that hit a deer or something. And you can see they pulled the bolt right through. I mean, right through. And that's some thick fiberglass. I mean, that's no joke. So at one point in time, it took a pretty good impact. And we've got some cracks in here that I need to address. But again, these are just stress cracks. They're just in the gel coat. But right here is a more serious crack. As you can see, there's some movement. It's broke all the way through right here. And I suspected it was. That was the primary reason for taking this whole grill off, was this corner right here, which you can see I peeled a bunch of that out. So now it's got just chunks missing. I'm going to go ahead and put a decent repair on the back side of here and on the back side of here. And I don't see any other spots that need repaired. But once we do that, Then I'm going to go ahead and build all this up with bodywork. I'm going to grind it all down first and get all of the inconsistencies and pockets, things like that, cracks deep enough where dirt got down in there. Get all that out of there, and then fill it all in with some fresh new filler, and then sculpt it to look like it should again before we go ahead and put primer on this. On this side now, I've got all of the chips sanded out. I have a few more little runs and blemishes I have to attend to. A few more pieces of tape I have to be able to remove. But other than that, this is all ready to go. The back's all ready to go. This side of the hood is completely ready to go. The top of the hood is ready to go. And as you can see, I really got in there because this hood was not original to this truck. It came off of some other truck. It was originally black, and a number of somebody's probably has worked on it over time, and it got crunched really good in the front. Now I'm going to take a little Sawzall, and I'm going to cut these off, but I put patches on the inside, decent sized ones on both sides, and then I did body work here. I ground all of that out, clear down almost 1/4 of an inch, if not a full 1/4 of an inch. I got rid of this entire ridge and replaced it all. And now it's ready for wet sanding primer. I didn't do any of this body work. This was already here. Again, this thing got crunched and somebody repaired it. And really, a lot of their work wasn't too bad as far as I can tell. I mean, if it was somebody that really knew what they were doing, then it's okay work at best. But if it's somebody that just owned a truck and needed to get it done and did it themselves, then I would consider it a success. But anyway, as you can see, I sanded down a long way into what they had done just to make sense of it. Just to use their paint and primer as a wet sanding primer, just to take it down and smooth it and resurface it using their paint and primer as a wet sanding primer. And I'm going to go ahead and put wet sanding primer over this entire hood, but that's just a nice little kind of shortcut, if you want to call it that, is using somebody else's paint and primer as a wet sanding primer just to get it smoothed up, because there was a lot of lumps and bumps and stuff in this bodywork. So I straightened it up, and somebody before me had primed it heavily in wet sanding primer and then just tore after it. You can see all these circular grooves in it on both sides, and it's because somebody just tore into it. I don't know if it was a grinder or a circular sander of some sort. I'm not sure what it was, but at some point in time somebody just grooved the living crap out of this thing, and because they just flat didn't know what they were doing. And it's on both sides. And again, it's a great example of using somebody else's paint and primer as a wet sanding primer and just sanding through. This actually took body work. This one was so deep it took body work. But the rest of them, this doesn't look like it would be smooth in 100 years, but it's very smooth because I used their paint and primer as a wet sanding primer, and I sanded everything nice and flat all the way up and around. All their little high spots are now visible, and now they're all smooth. And I'm going to wet sand prime it and then sand it again. So a lot of this work has been done, and now I just need to get my Sawzall, cut these out, and that's pretty much it. And then we're pretty much ready to prime. And now here it is first thing the next morning. And I got this all in primer yesterday. Got everything all sprayed out. And I've already got this door sanded. I've already gotten started here before I remembered that I haven't done any filming yet. But that's really all I've gotten done yet. But what I need to do today is get everything that I got primed yesterday sanded down today so I can get the white on today. Now all we're doing on the tank is a big strip down the middle of the tank because the tank's going to have a white stripe. And so what we're trying to get done today then is we're trying to get the wheels in white, this big stripe in white, the cab in white, except for the roof cap, and the hood in white, except for the fenders. Well, all right, got everything sanded, everything scratched, everything blown off. Now let's go ahead and get some primer on this guy. And at this point, everything is primed. Everything's had plenty of time to sit and cure. Now I'm going to go ahead and get some paint on this guy. Okay, here it is first thing the next morning. Got everything shot yesterday, as you saw. Now today the goal is going to be to get everything segregated. Segregate the hood from the fenders and the cab from the roof, opposite of the way we do it a lot of times. A lot of times you'll always see us masking up the fenders or masking up the roof cap to do the rest. But because of the layout, because of the way the colors are going to be on this truck, it's just more wise by far to do it this way. So today we'll be masking up all of the white on the cab, all of the white on the hood, and we'll be putting a stripe job on it, and we'll be masking up the rear wheels as well. And if I can, I want to get some prep done today, and if there's any daylight left, I'll probably even get some primer on it. Another full day. Might as well get started. We're getting the masking done on the cab. We'll be masking up the hood now that I have the vinyl, separating everything out. Won't be long, we'll have the cab and the hood masked up, and as you can see, I've started on the stripes. Just barely gotten started on the stripes, laying out measurements and that sort of thing. And now we're on to masking the hood. Got the cab all masked up. Got the stripe laid out on the passenger side, as you can see. Rather than run the red in there, which I was not interested in. The previous stripe had that red stripe in it. I didn't think red really goes all that well with sky blue myself. And so I just did an accent stripe just to kind of offset it. Now I'm going to do the other side exactly the same. Now they're getting the masking finished up on this side. They've got all the masking done here. And over on this side, all the masking's done. 100% ready to go. All right, well, at this point, we've got everything done. Everything's masked up, everything's sanded, everything's been blown off. Now all I have to do is get some primer mixed up and get this guy in some primer. All right, now that we got the primer on, primer's had plenty of time to sit and cure. Now we're gonna go ahead and get some paint on this guy. So here it is first thing the next morning. The crew's going to be here pretty quick. I've already looked it over and I didn't find any glaring weaknesses, so I'm going to go ahead and begin unmasking it before they get here. And the tank I'm not as worried about. I'll be unmasking those stripes while the crew is doing their thing. That's not that big a deal because we can trust that. Because I took that down to bare metal, bare bones, and built it from there up. So I can trust that stripe job. But where I segregated the fender off from the hood, that's other people's paintwork under there. Right there under that edge. So again, I got to be very cautious and optimistic and go ahead and unmask these fenders first. And if that goes well, then we got a green light to go ahead and get everything else done here today. Okay, that went pretty well. As you can see, I didn't unmask everything. All I did was just take this one piece of tape all the way off. You can see the white line all the way down. That little piece of 1/8 inch vinyl fine line tape. I just took all that off because that's what matters. Nothing else is stuck. You can just freely move the rest of it around. That doesn't matter. What mattered was that vinyl tape. And so I got that up off here. The crew can go ahead and unmask this hood when the time comes. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the stripes on the tank and get them unmasked now. Well, I got this side, the passenger side, unmasked anyway, and it turned out good. I'm gonna go ahead and move to the other side and get that unmasked. All right, crew's in. We're gonna start ripping and tearing. Got everything else unmasked, got the details unmasked. Now we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of this unmasked and start getting it put back together. Right about now. Just getting the final rubber deal on these fenders. We'll put the grill on next, and that'll just about finish this guy up. All right, got her all put back together. Let's go ahead and walk around it and have us a look. All right, well, here we've got a 99 Kenworth T800 water truck. At first glance, it looks like a vac truck because that's a vac tank, but this is actually a water distribution truck for like gravel roads to keep dust down, and that's what they've turned it into. And here's how the chassis turned out up front here, and on the passenger side. And we got their spare lid all prepped and shot. And here's how the top turned out. And here's a wide angle view of how it turned out. When it showed up, it had all sorts of issues with the hood. The hood was absolutely covered in cracks. And then somebody in this hood's past had gotten on there and done a very amateur job sanding the side and just left it rippled, absolutely rippled, like speed bumps. Got all that straightened up. Hood looks new again. A few little fiberglass repairs to do on the inside. We did those. Turned out good. Got good gloss on it. Got all the details down both sides. The insides of the tray, even the back side of this bar right here. Did a bunch of body work down both sides of this tank just so I could guarantee that this stripe would come out nice and crisp. And it has. It paid off. You can see my accent stripes in place of the red that was on here. That red accent stripe, it set it off all right, but red doesn't really go with sky blue, so I just made the decision to do it this way. But as you can see, nice and tight, straight as an arrow, nice and clean and crisp. Got the hubs, got the wheels, the underside of the fenders, chassis. Took these off to paint it and then put them back on when it was done. These are little air tubes that actuate these sprayers. Took that spotlight off and that gauge off to do this job. Again, all the details. Inside of the tray, nice, crisp, straight stripe that runs the length of it. Same dimensions as the other one, roughly, with accent stripes. I put in a new reservoir for them. The one that was in here was in absolutely terrible shape. Right here, in fact. Busted up the side, cracked everywhere, all the way around it. That guy had served its life and then some. And so we put this replacement in there. All aluminum. It's got a little sight glass on the side. I already filled it up with the same fluid that they had in the other one. I got it right straight out of the other one. Tied it all in. Masked up these lines before I ever sandblasted so they're not all torn up. Got in between the cab, welded a ring on right there. So hold all this stuff back to keep it out of the cab before it was really into the cab. Now we're holding it back. The back of the cab was, you saw it, was a mess, had holes in it and that sort of thing. It still has this one hole. That's because I don't know if they're going to use that for another cable or not. I'm going to get a silver, there's a silver hole plug that you can buy in many different sizes and you just snap them right into stuff like that. And I'm just going to put a hole plug in that one in case they need to reuse that hole at some point. But other than that, as you can see, the back is nice and straight. There's no more holes, no dents, dings, anything. Looks like it's brand new. And this guy is ready to go spray down some gravel roads. And here is how this 99 Kenworth T800 looked before we put it under the Flash Industrial Painting knife. This is before Team S.T.E.A.M gets a hold of it. This is how it looked on day one. And here it is after. And here it is after. Quite a change. Quite a profound change, considering how cancerous this was. You can still see a few little cancer spots here and there, and that's typical for equipment. That's really typical for water trucks. No big deal, but I got rid of all of the ugly cancer that would have messed this stripe up. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm sure they will be too. And when they show up with that piece of machinery that they're trading me in exchange for this paint job, I'll show you that as well. And here it is leaving the yards. Right next to the machine they just dropped off for me. Wave bye. See you, boys. Anyway, here's the machine. It's a 2004, second year they were ever built. They started these in 2003. Bobcat 5600 Toolcat. And he got a really good deal on it because it's really low hour. This machine only has 900 hours, which is nothing for one of these. I see these all the time with 5, 6, 7,000 hours on them. So, especially for its age, I can't believe it has that few hours. It only has 900 hours on it. It belonged to a municipality. So, in other words, it had all of its regular maintenance done at the regular times, all of its repairs done if it needed them in a professional setting. And here's a nice thing. I just hinted to the guy that I needed to go get some forks once the machine showed up. I was just said it in passing. And when it gets here, yeah, I need to run and get some forks for it because I got some pallets I need to move around. And here the machine shows up with a set of forks on it and a bucket. Those brothers really hooked me up. Thanks, guys. And anyway, as you can see, the fender's busted. This fender's busted. And the appearance is really ratty because this machine looks like it's never seen a single minute of indoor action. It looks like it's been kept outside in the sun its entire time. It looks like it's been kept outside a few feet from the sun the entire time. And I'm not complaining. That's the only reason I even got in on one of these. With this few hours, this is a $32,000 machine. So he got a wonderful deal on it because it's a close friend of his, longtime family friend that owns the dealership. And it looks like this. So the dealership price was lower because people aren't shopping for something that looks like it's ready for the boneyard. And believe me, it isn't. It's the opposite of that. It's in perfect shape. And when I'm done painting it, I'm going to paint it up. I'm going to put a sticker kit on it. I'm going to make this thing look brand new again. New front fenders, all new paint, all new stickers, everything. It already has. I mean, these are the original tires. And look how much tread they have. This thing has no time on it. So it's basically a brand new machine. Well, I'm going to go ahead, make it look new from top to bottom. And this thing's going to be a gem sitting here in my yards. Hey, if you like this video, go ahead and take the time to hit the like button. It's going to help me grow this channel. And if you want to see more of what goes on around here, come check me out on Facebook at Flash Industrial Painting. And if you want to see more projects like this, or domestic auto body, or art, or gardening, or many of the other things we do around here, you might as well just go ahead and take the time to hit the subscribe button while you're at it, because you know, we always got something going on. We'll see you guys around.